Hello everyone, so today I want to talk about why I'm a vegetarian. Now I can't speak for all vegetarians, this is just basically a summary of why I, as a person, am a vegetarian, not necessarily why everyone else is a vegetarian that is a vegetarian. And I'm a vegetarian because I don't wish to feed off death. I don't wish to feed off slaughter, and I don't wish to feed off of that which is unnecessary. There is no need to slaughter the amount of animals we slaughter in the West and in the East, in a lot of places, to sustain ourselves. Ultimately, the cattle, the livestock that we slaughter, consumes so much of the grain and the corn that we produce, to the extent that if we did not feed and water and just make them reproduce, to where we had to feed and water so many of these livestock animals, we'd actually be able to solve world hunger. If we didn't forcibly breed these animals to the extent that we do to be slaughtered, then we could develop human foods from the grain and the corn that we feed to the animals. And that's one aspect. Now, when I say I don't want to feed off of like death and slaughter, I don't want to needlessly support a system that kills animals just so I can have the food that I want. Now, of course, I'd like a steak, I'd like chicken, I'd like to have, the meat, but that which is done to produce these foodstuffs that we so readily consume is not a process worth being a part of, because, in fact, is a process that should be shunned. Because it's both unnecessary and it simply is driving us to a point as a one species humanity of not being able to feed our populace because we want to have meat. You can look at these facts for yourselves. You don't have to take my word for it. Please look it up. But just look up how much corn and grain livestock consume compared to how much food they produce when we slaughter them. How much meat they produce when we slaughter them. Now. Also, I'm Hindu, and I believe that the consciousness in animals is the same consciousness that's in us. It's just less progressed, as per the cycle of reincarnation. And that consciousness does translate to the grander whole consciousness. Once all of our consciousnesses are one, and even when they're not one, even when all our souls and our consciousness are one, before that time, their pain still has an effect on us. It sends out kind of messages, electromagnetic, you might say, that influence other forms of consciousness like us. They're not developed forms of consciousness, but they still have consciousness. Cows, pigs, livestock like that, even chickens. Now, there's been recent studies that have shown that people who eat meats have a higher rate of anxiety, have a higher rate of likelihood for cancer, and it's recently been found that the chemicals that basically exist as fear in livestock can be translated to our own mental chemicals, when we consume them, when we eat them. Now, this also applies to, I think it also applies to dairy, but to a lesser extent, when the cows are mistreated. And I'm just a vegetarian, I'm not a vegan. And one day I think I will be vegan. For now, I haven't gained the strength to get to that level, but I'm just at the vegetarian level right now. But at the very least, the cows aren't slaughtered. The livestock isn't slaughtered. Goats, when you get goat cheese, is not slaughtered, so you don't feed off death. But a lot of the time in these dairy farms, there is a lot of pain, just like there's in slaughterhouses. And sometimes the pain lasts longer than in slaughterhouses, because in slaughterhouses they end up dying. But it's a slightly different argument. But it is true that livestock still goes through pain, even if they're not being killed, and we're not feeding off their dead meat. They can still suffer pain, and we can still, eat cheese and drink milk and benefit the companies that do this by buying their products. So I'm not perfect by any means. I'm just saying why I'm vegetarian. Because I don't want to feed off death. I don't think it's necessary to feed off meat, and I think it is actually depleting our resources as far as foodstuffs that we could feed to human beings by forcing these animals to copulate and, well, not necessarily copulate, but reproduce through insemination, things like that. Now, you may have different reasons for being a vegetarian, whether it's a religious reason, spiritual reason, or it's taking up our resources reason, because there's a lot of water that goes into producing 1 pound of beef, and our water is running out, our clean water supply. It really is, even in first world countries. Or you might feel, as I do as well, that it's just feeding off of death. But however you feel about being a vegetarian, this isn't a video to convince people to be a vegetarian. This is a video just showing why I'm a vegetarian. And I think if fewer people ate meat, we'd actually have more food in the world because of the reason that I mentioned. But and really, it's a subject of world hunger tied into something we might not expect, the consumption of meat. So I'm really interested to hear a lot of other people's thoughts on this. I've heard a lot of different thoughts on this, and I've done some research. But if you have any comments that you want to shoot down there, feel free to do so. If you have any questions for me, feel free to ask them. If you ask them in a respectful way, I'll answer them. And, I hope we can work towards a state of being where we don't feed off pain as much. We don't feed off death as much. And we can feed everybody by not forcing animals to give birth just so we can slaughter them. And that's really what I care about. Reducing the slaughtering and just trying to respect animals more, even in dairy farms, even in chicken farms that produce eggs. Just giving them more respect, and not just respect, but producing a habitable environment to them to where they can live relatively happy lives, even if they're just going to produce milk, cheese, well, cheese is a process, and or eggs. But thank you very much for watching. I hope you all have a great day, and just keep some of these things in mind.